Actually, I think it's the other way. Hello, good evening. We are, perfect.
A little bit more.
We are adjusting the camera. Or Jen is adjusting the camera.
A little bit more. Keep going.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Jen. Yeah. And good evening, everyone. Good to see you, Demi and Andy. Okay. Demi says, I love the thumbnail. Well, the thumbnail is of these two cute little monks donated by Luciana. So thank you, Luciana, for the two cute little monks that are in the dining hall here at Empty Cloud.
Yeah, they're from a shop in Thailand, in the airport to be exact, but I'm showing them in other shops as well.
All right, so we can start by chanting the Ratana Sutta as usual. So you can find the sutta.
Yep, the link is there.
Okay, perfect, right there. And I love, Demi, your login name, Demi Livestream Enter. That's pretty clever. That's great. All right. Okay, let's start by chanting.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato Samma Sambuddhassa. Yanidha bhutani samagatani bhummani vayani va antalike. Sabeva bhuta sumana bhavantu atopi sakacha sunantu basitam. Tasmahi bhutani sameta sabe metang karota manusiya pajaya. Divacha vrato chaharanti ye baling tasmahi nerakata apamata. Yan kinchi vidang idhavahurang vasage suvayang ratanang panitang. Nano samang atitathagateena idampi buddhe ratanang panitang. Edena sachena suvati hotu. Kayang viragang amatang panitang yada jagasa kyamuni samahito. Natena dhammena samati kinchi idampi dhamme ratanang panitang. Edena sachena suvati hotu. Yang Buddha seto varivannayi suching samadhi manandari kanyamaho. Samadhi nadhena samona vinjati idampi dhamme ratanang panitang. Edena sachena suvati hotu. Ye bungala artasatang pasatha chatari dhani yugani honti. Te dakineya sugata sasavaka te sudinnani mahaphalani. Idampi sanghe ratanang panitang edena sachena suvati hotu. Ye supayuta manasa dalhena dekamino gotamasa sanamhi. Te pati padhamatang vigaya ladhamudhanim buddhing punjamana. Idampi sanghe ratanang panitang edena sachena suvati hotu. Yatinna kilo pataving sito siya chatum bhivate piya sampakam piyo Tatu pamangsa purisang vadami yo arya satchani aveksha pasati Idampi sanghe ratanang panitang etena sachena suvati hotu Ye arya satchani vibhavayanti gambhira panyena sudesitani Kinchapi te honti pusapamata na te bhavanga tamanga diyanti Idampi sanghe ratanang panitang etena sachena suvati hotu Sahava sadasana sampadaya taya suthamma jahita bhavanti Sakaya deti vichike chitancha silam vatang vapi yadati kinchi Chatuha paye hicha vipamuto chacha pitana niyabhambo katum Idampi sanghe ratanang panitang etena sachena suvati hotu Kinchapi sokham mankaroti papakang kayena vata uracheta sava Abhambo sota sapatichadaya Abhambata ditapada savuta Idambi sanghe ratanang panitang etena sachena suvati hotu Vanapagumbe yatha pussitange gimhanamase patamasmingimhe Tatupamang dhammavarangadesai nibbanagaming paramang hitaya Idampi buddhe ratanang panitang etena sachena suvati hotu Varo varanyo varado varaharo anutaro dhamma varangadesai Idampi buddhe ratanang panitang etena sachena suvati hotu Kinang puranang navang nati
sambhavam virata citta
ayatike bhavasming Te kina bija virolhin chanda nimanti dhira yatayang paripo Idampi sanghe ratanang panitang etena sachena suvati hotu Yani dhabhutani samagatani bhummani vayani vaantalike Tathagatam deva manusapujitang buddham namassama suvati hotu Yani dhabhutani samagatani bhummani vayani vaantalike Tathagatam deva manusapujitang dhammam namassama suvati hotu Yani dhabhutani samagatani bhummani vayani vaantalike Tathagatam deva manusapujitang sangham namassama suvati hotu Etena sacha vanjena dukkha pasamentu te Etena sacha vanjena bhayavu pasamentu te Etena sacha vanjena rogavupasamento te. All right, that was lovely, at least on this end. And so welcome to those who are checking in. So Andy, Demi, Gita, Jean, and Key.
And I think there's the problem that happened last time without the chat.
Give us just a moment. The live chat seems to be malfunctioning. We'll have it fixed in just a second. In the meantime, just a quick reminder that although you're welcome to ask any question or bring up any topic, to start off, we'll limit it to 2 questions per person. And then if we get through all of those and there's still plenty of time, then we can open it up and people can ask additional questions.
Okay.
So let's see, we're pulling up the live chat window again, hopefully. Yes, there we go. Wonderful. Okay, now we can see everything. So, hello, Gabriella, Melinda, Belinda, Sujato, Bante Sujato.
Ooh,
Hello,
sadhu,
welcome.
sadhu.
Glad to see you. Bante Akaliko, yes, welcome.
I think that's why the live chat went crazy.
Yeah.
Because all of these great monastics online.
And I see Gabriella's quite excited. Anyway, hello, Lawrence. So welcome all of you. So please go ahead. Bante Akaliko said that Bante Sujato is continuing the ancient Buddhist tradition of trolling. Well, in that case, we're here. Bring it on. Trust me, I have a lot of experience with trolling.
Do you?
Well, mostly on the receiving end.
Yeah, I see.
So Andy says, what have either of you ever done about being struck with mental states of rebellion towards senior monastics?
Ooh.
Well, Ayasoma has a lot to say on that subject.
But Bante actually has been ordained way longer than I have, so definitely has more interesting stories to tell.
What have I ever done about it? Well, so there's a great principle, which is if you can do something about it, then do something about it. If you can't do anything about it, then practice equanimity. So in reflecting on why I'm experiencing rebellion, a sense of rebellion towards senior monastics, and investigating, well, what's behind it? Is there a reasonable basis for that? So, for example, are the senior monastics expecting something unreasonable, something that goes against the Dhamma, as I understand it? Are they adhering to some principle or custom which is hindering my practice or the practice of others? Are they doing something which is causing harm? And in those cases, then the rebellion is actually quite appropriate. So contrary to popular belief, we are not obligated to obey our seniors. We're obligated to respect our seniors, but we're also obligated to respect our juniors and our equals. Rather, the relationship between junior and senior is one of mutual support, mutual appreciation, and mutual benefit. So anytime there's some kind of flaw in that relationship, then from either side, then we should try to fix it. We should try to correct it. And if the situation seems unsalvageable, then it's time to move on. So one thing that's very interesting, for example, in the suttas, actually it's in the Vinaya, sorry. In the Vinaya, it talks about the duties of a junior to a senior and a senior to a junior. And they're identical. So the senior monk should make sure that the junior has enough robes, enough food, a dwelling place, enough medicine and medical supplies. And if the junior monk is feeling dissatisfied, then the senior should give them a Dhamma talk to try to cheer them up. should try to help them get through the problems in their practice. And also the flip side. If the junior notices that the senior needs robes or food or somewhere to sleep or medicine, then they should try to help the senior get those things. But also, if the senior monk is feeling dissatisfied, or if they're off track in their practice or their understanding, then it's the junior monk's obligation to correct the senior monk. So these days, there's often this belief that junior monks should never correct seniors, should never offer instruction to seniors. But that's not what we see in the Pali Canon. What we see in the Pali Canon is a much more equal arrangement. So seniority is not given anywhere near as much importance in the canonical texts as it is in modern day Buddhist monasteries. Most Buddhist monasteries. This one's a little bit different. So all my attempts to impose a top-down hierarchy on Ayasoma have been a complete failure. So this apparently is not quite like other Buddhist monasteries. Whether I want an equitable arrangement or not, that's what we're getting, apparently. So declares she who declares things. So in other situations, though, I would reflect on my feeling of rebellion, and I'd realize, actually, I'm just being a self-centered jerk who's obsessed with my own viewpoints. In which case, my rebellion is not actually based on anything wholesome or useful. It's just based on my own stubbornness. It's based on my own attachments. It's based on my own narrowness. In which case, I need to practice equanimity and work on letting go of these things. So those are some general principles. So one thing that's helpful, again, is really checking. Why is this feeling of rebellion present? And if it's based on something wholesome, then try to find a wholesome way to fix the problem. Again, the Buddha's instructions on giving and receiving admonishment are really helpful here. But if it's just stubbornness or attachment or obsessiveness, which is not connected with anything wholesome, then the best thing to do is to practice letting go, practicing equanimity, practicing harmonizing, practicing gentleness and tolerance towards your fellow monastics, just as you hope that they will practice tolerance and gentleness towards you as well. So I've done both sides of this practice, and I've also screwed up both sides of this practice many, many times. Anyway, Ayasoma, what are your thoughts? Again, you have a lot of experience with this.
Well, I will actually share what the senior monastic who is currently residing here at MP Cloud Monastery shared with me. Her name is Ayasuchita. So she's in the building, but not currently in this room. But when I first met her, she told me one phrase that really got stuck in my mind, and it was, whenever you meet a senior monastic, don't judge, don't criticize, learn what you want to become, and learn what you don't want to become. So pretty much any senior practitioner to you is actually a great teacher in one way or the other. So there will be a great teacher for the things they have developed, and a great teacher for the things they have not developed, or they have developed in perhaps an unwholesome way. So really a great sort of canvas to work on what you want to become as a monastic. And I would say in general, pretty much anything you do as a lay person as well, you can use the same approach. Instead of fixating, oh, why are they doing this? Why are they saying that? Why aren't they supposed to be doing this and that? But rather going, okay, actually, I want to cultivate that mind of kindness and wisdom, and perhaps I don't want to cultivate that sort of side of laziness or grumpiness or whatever it is that we see in others.
Okay, great.
And I see there's like
there's a number of amusing comments here. So Bhante Kaliko, Bhante Kaliko says, Bhante Sujata tells me that senior monks are always right. So he is saying, I wonder if Ayasoma gets the same advice from Bhante Sudaso. Actually, no, because I've had lots of issues with senior monastics who are clearly not right. So I've told her not to believe someone just because they're senior to her.
So I'm just following what my senior is telling me to do.
Yes. However, if the advice is correct, I have to give it, even if it bites me in the back. Bhante Sujato says, I'm feeling this personally right now with the crying smiley. Don't ask a Kaliko this question. Ahaha. Drama.
Bhante Sujato is telling me not to believe everything I hear on the internet. Oh, I miss you.
You guys are so wonderful. I hope we meet each other again soon. It's been too long. In fact, we should just live together. It would be so lovely.
Yes. PSA. Let's join the two sides of the world.
So Gabriella has a question. She says, my question is about the practice of cultivating the parami of determination, adhitthana. I have heard that there is satchaditthana, chagaditthana, upasamaditthana, and panyaditthana. What is upasamaditthana and how do we practice it? Do you want to answer this one?
Absolutely not.
Okay. So adhitthana means resolving upon or determining upon. Interesting fun fact, most of the time when this word is used in the suttas, it's in a negative sense. Like when you're stubbornly obsessed with something. So it's usually used as a negative word. And its use as a positive word mostly appears in post-canonical Pali texts. Still, the idea of making resolutions and determinations is an important part of Buddhism. So that's more of a fun trivia fact rather than anything meaningful. Satchaditthana, determination to be truthful, commitment to the truth. Chagaditthana, determination of generosity. Upasamaditthana, upasama means peacefulness, like strong peacefulness. Upasama is often equated with the peace of nibbana, the peace of awakening, the peace of purifying one's mind. So resolving to attain the peace of a pure mind. That would be how I might explain upasamaditthana. And panyaditthana is the determination to develop wisdom, such as a direct understanding, a direct experiential understanding of dependent origination, for example, or of the three universal characteristics. So those are my thoughts on that.
And Tina is asking, can you both share where you lived? How old are you? Ooh. How did you become monks? Do you want to go first?
No, it's your turn.
I didn't realize we were doing turns. We were taking turns. Okay, so go back to the question. I don't remember.
Oh.
Where you lived? Well, right now I'm living at Empty Cloud Monastery. Before I was at the Rockaway Summer House.
Both of which are monasteries that we started.
And yeah, I've been living in the United States for the past 10 years, and I lived in a few other countries, and I'm originally from Italy. I am 38 years old, or years young. I'm 38 years young. And why did I become a monk? Because it's great. No, because I met all these like really awesome people. I used to be a journalist, so I would constantly interview really amazing people. And then I started meeting monastics, and they were really, really, really amazing. Like very different from the other amazing people that I had met up until then. So the more I was meeting monastics, the more I was like, I think I want to give me some of that. I want to become more and more like these people that I am interacting with. So as with everything that I always wanted in life, I made it happen. So here I
am. So I'm originally from Colorado, and I've lived at a few different monasteries in North America. So a couple of different places in California, some places in Canada, different parts of the East Coast as well, including Bhavana Society, Tasarana, Abhayagiri, Tassajara, various places. I am 33 years old. And I became a monk because I want to attain enlightenment. It's really all it comes down to. Yeah, I'm very deeply committed to Buddhist practice. And when your commitment passes a certain threshold, then monastic life is the only thing that makes sense anymore. It's the only path which really, really fits.
And Belinda is saying, sometimes I have feelings of aversion towards colleagues or supervisors who are much younger than me, who ask me to do something. I've been teaching longer than they've been alive. I feel this conceit rising up in me. Who are you to tell me? What do you know? It doesn't feel good. Best way to deal with that? Actually, it's so funny because
I get this all the time.
No, it's not true. But when I was reading the suttas the first time around, I found one of these like charming suttas where the Buddha talks about a monastic ordaining, perhaps in their sort of older stage of life. And then all of a sudden, they're very junior to other monastics who are significantly more junior than them in terms of age, but significantly more senior in terms of monastic life. So the Buddha describes exactly this mind state. So it goes like, well, when I was a lay person, I would tell these people what to do and what not to do, what to eat and what not to eat, like a bunch of different orders. But now as a monastic, I have to endure all these like little, young kids are telling me this and this and that. So then the monastic starts pondering all these things and goes, how about I actually just disrobe and I get back to that kind of sort of pleasant state of being. So moral of the story, don't feel special. This is something that happens to each one of us. And actually, sometimes it has nothing to do with age either. It has to do, for example, with experience. So I actually have to deal with this all the time. Well, not all the time, but most of the time at Buddhist Insights, because we started this organization together. But Bhante Sudazo has spent most of his adult life as a monastic, and I spent most of my adult life working in a particular field. So I just have a bunch of different worldly skills that, because I'm currently in this form, people don't know or don't assume that I have. So there are two things that have happened for the past 4 years. Either they start lay-splaining me how to do certain things in terms of, for example, communication, something that I have over 10 years of experience in. Or they assume that Bhante Sudazo is because he's of the male gender, then clearly he knows how to do everything and I don't know how to do anything. So they explain me how to tell Bhante how to do certain things better. And all of these have been a cause of suffering at the beginning of my practice. And now they're kind of like a cause of laughter, actually. A lot of times I'm just like, like, who cares? It's not really like you need to start finding humor in all those silly things. Because realistically, you can't really control other people's ideas and beliefs and ways to relate. But what you can control is obviously your approach towards it. So allocating all that anger, anxiety on and basing your sense of self-worth on what other people think of you, it's just a big waste of time. So instead, you can allocate that energy in cultivating a wholesome mind state and cultivating your interests, cultivating things that are beneficial for yourself and other. But with a mind of ha ha ha, ha 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 ha, just laughing. And if you get to it with that approach, I think most of the time, I feel like I'm successful at it. Sometimes it still stings from time to time. Perhaps I'm in a bad mood and I'm like, seriously, do I have to deal with someone now explaining me like the ABC? It's kind of like, so Jen, here we have our resident who is an AI, like she's very like smart in math and artificial intelligence, right? So I'm a very creative person and I don't know anything about math. So if I started like explaining to her how to do 2 + 2, she would just go like, seriously? But then she would also laugh about it because she's not an aversive type. So see, she's laughing about it right now just at the thought of it. She would go like, oh, how cute. Oh, little cutie. Oh, she's trying to explain to me how to do additions and she doesn't know how to do additions. Oh, so it's the same way. You got to laugh about it.
Yeah. So first off, everything she said. A couple of things I would also say is, first off, notice that feeling of conceit, that feeling of righteous indignation, and recognize how unpleasant and uncomfortable it is. So first off, just recognize that feeling of like, how dare they say that to me? Just notice how unpleasant that is and try to let it go. Stop fueling it, stop feeding it. And try to empathize with the other person. Because the other person, they might actually think that they've discovered some amazing new way to go about handling your job. And of course, they probably naturally assume that you never thought of this and that you'll be so grateful to have this perspective presented. Or they might think that they know the best way, the right way, or and again, that they think this is the way things should be done. So you can try to empathize a bit, seeing that they're trying to do what they think is right or what they think is best. It's just that they don't have your depth of experience. So listen, and then you can say things like, oh, thank you for suggesting that. That's a really interesting idea. I'm glad you brought it up. So I tried that 25 years ago while your mom was teaching you how to ride a bicycle. Okay, maybe be a little bit nicer. I'm an aversive type, so naturally it comes out aversive. You can say something like, yeah, that's a great idea. I tried that 25 years ago and I found it didn't work so well. So I stopped. And instead, I've been doing XYZ, which I think is a much better system based on these reasons and based on my experience. And you can talk a bit about why you're doing what you're doing and your experiences. And you can even say something like, if you really want to try this, you can try it. However, my experience has been that it doesn't work so well. And there's another way which works much better, which I've used a lot, which is such and such. But doing all of this in a very gentle way and acknowledging the other person. It's like, yes, that's a good idea. I agree that that's something which is worth trying, which is why I already thought of that 25 years ago. And it's why I already tried it and already saw that it's not the best option here. But starting with validating them, because from their perspective, it's probably a great idea. But that's because they don't have your perspective yet. So sometimes that's a way that you can gently bring things around. So, for example, every now and then Ayasoma comes up with a brilliant new idea. And I'm like, yes, that's a brilliant idea. And it doesn't work terribly well because from my experience of living in monasteries for half of my life, I've seen this tried in monasteries many, many times over the past 15 years. And I've seen that it generally doesn't turn out terribly well. But here's another way we can do things which is similar, but even better. And of course, she rejects my advice and does whatever she wanted to do in the first place, and it fails.
It goes perfectly well.
It doesn't turn out terribly well. And then afterwards, she's like, oh, you were right, Bhante. And then, of course, we wind up doing what I suggested in the first place anyway.
Okay, this has happened 3 times out of like 1,000 things that we
3
did.
times a day for the past 4.5 years.
Greed, hatred, and television.
Okay, so moving on. Bhante Kaliko said, yes, let's move in together. Mostly because Bhante Sujata won't let me get a cat. And you have Stan. Yes, we have a cat. See, bonus points. Anyway, Gabriella asks, sometimes I have good meditation days and sometimes I have bad ones. How do we measure progress in meditation and in practice of the Noble Eightfold Path? And it's your turn.
Right. In a very simple way. Look at your mind and see, am I cultivating wholesome mind states? Then the answer is yes, you're making progress. Is your mind cultivating unwholesome mind states? So is it kind of backsliding? Then you're not making progress. So there's something that needs to be looked at, assessed, and fixed.
Yeah, another thing that I would say is that it's hard to measure progress in days. It's easier to measure progress in years. So every day, like you'll go up and down a fair bit. But over the course of years, you'll notice that that up and down goes gradually higher. So if you do it day by day, yeah, you're probably not going to be very happy. But rather you reflect, how is my mind overall compared to how it was 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years ago? And you'll notice that overall, you're making progress. And you'll also probably be able to trace where you're not progressing so well and need to make extra effort, and also where you're doing really well. So you'll start to get an overall sense of your strengths and weaknesses and how to build on your strengths and counteract your weaknesses. So that's what I'd mainly encourage. Don't get hung up on day by day progress, but rather year by year progress. Okay.
And Boone is asking, hi, can help to explain more about near enemy of compassion? Is feeding strays considered as compassion? What is strays?
Stray cats? Animals, I think. Why is it down here?
I'll fix it. Do you want to answer? While I fix it.
Okay, I see. Near enemy of compassion. So this is a commentarial idea, which it's actually quite helpful. The idea that the 4 Brahmaviharas each have a near enemy and a far enemy. So the far enemy is something which is directly opposite. So the far enemy of compassion is cruelty. It's the direct opposite. Compassion is wanting people to not suffer. Cruelty is wanting people to suffer. So they're direct opposites. The near enemy of compassion is usually described as pity. So pity resembles compassion, but it's poisoned a little bit. So the problem with the near enemies is that they resemble the wholesome mind state closely enough that we sometimes get them confused. So sometimes we're feeling pity and we think it's compassion. That's why it's called the near enemy. It's almost there, but it's a little bit wrong. The problem with pity is that it tends to contain elements of conceit, of superiority, of disdain, of aversion. So it tends to have a lot of these negative mind states wrapped into it. So that's the thing to watch out for. So the near enemy of metta, I think, is affection in the sense of like that attachment, like liking someone, but with a strong sense of attachment, as opposed to loving kindness is just wanting them to be happy. So it's without any attachment. The near enemy of mudita, I don't remember off the top of my head. The near enemy of equanimity is apathy or indifference. So again, something which is similar to equanimity, but a little bit tainted, a little bit wrong, a little bit off. If anybody remembers the near enemy of mudita, by the way, if you could please put it in the chat, because I always forget that one. So as for feeding strays, is feeding strays compassion? Absolutely. Feed them strays. They're hungry. They need food. Feed them. It's good karma. It's very compassionate to feed strays. Yes, do it. By all means. Whether they're stray animals or stray humans, feed them. A practice which I've done for the past few years, living in New York City, is when I go into the city, I bring some snacks with me to hand out to beggars. So they're not snacks for me, because I don't eat snacks when I'm out and about, generally speaking. But they're snacks to hand out to beggars, people who will appreciate it and benefit from it. So yeah, give food. Give food to stray cats, stray dogs, stray humans, stray birds. Yeah, help them out. Yep. Okay, go ahead.
And Gabriela is saying, also technically the curve is flattening and the actual deaths are far less than what was projected. Thus their chanting of the Ratana Sutta is working because less people are dying. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let it be so. And Sally's asking, if someone attains stream entry, how could that person confirm he, she did really become a stream enter? Is there some techniques to double check? My understanding is that you just know. As simple as that. It's kind of like, how do you know that you've entered the kitchen? Hopefully not the chicken. You have not entered the chicken. But how do you know you've entered the kitchen? You just know.
That said, there's a couple useful things in the suttas. So one that's really helpful is the Kosambhya Sutta, or Kosambi Sutta. It's Majjhima Nikaya 48, maybe? Anyway, somewhere around there. Kosambi Sutta or Kosambhya Sutta. So the first half is about not arguing with your co-practitioners, but the second half gives 7 ways to tell whether or not you're a stream enterer. So that's a particularly useful list because it goes into a bit more detail. The standard list of a stream enterer only gives 3 qualities. So the removal of the 3 fetters. That's useful, but the 7 additional factors given in the Kosambi Sutta brings it to a total of 10. 10 factors which you can check in yourself. And that's both useful to see whether or not you're a stream enterer, which most people who think they're stream enterers find that they don't line up against that list of 10. So it's good to check against. But it's also helpful to be encouraging because some people, they think that stream entry is this impossibly distant goal. But then you look at those list of 10 factors and you're like, actually, I'm doing pretty well on a few of these. I'm not perfect and I don't have all 10, but I'm doing pretty well on a few of them. So it can help give you some confidence that you're actually pointed in the right direction.
Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah.
And I don't remember you lace-plaining to me, Andy. That's sweet, though. Sally, not the lace-plaining, but that you're apologizing. I don't think you did. And Sally says, wishing to pay respect to Venerable Bhante Sujato, great empty sadhus for Bhante's translations of the Pali Canon. Yes, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. How did Ayasoma and Bhante Sudazo meet? Ooh. So, I went to a Buddhist monastery to Bhavana Society Monastery in West Virginia to do a retreat there. 4.5 years ago, October 2015. And one of the teachers there, it was co-led by all the resident monastics, and one of the resident monastics and also teachers there was Bhante Sudazo. So he gave a talk there, and it really made an impact in my mind. So helped me with my practice as I was in the monastery, and after the end of the retreat, I met with him, and he was coming to New York after. He was planning on coming to the state of New York, actually, after a week or so. And so to do a bunch of teachings. And so I started following him around and became the first Buddhist stalker. And asking him a lot of questions. Hello, what is this? I don't agree with this. I don't agree with that. And why are you saying this? And why are you saying that? So as time went by, he started recognizing me like, oh, look at the Italian is here again. Oh, the Italian. But we also kind of became sort of friendly and started talking about how it was very difficult to find a monastic who would teach on a regular basis in English in New York City to people on a mainstream level. So we then, after 3 months or 4 months, something like that, very fast, after having seen each other, I think a handful of times, we started Buddhist Insights together. And then here we are.
Okay. By the way, there's only a couple questions left in the chat, and we have plenty of time. So if anybody has more questions, at this point, we'll drop the question limit, and everyone can ask as many questions as they want at this point. So Tina says, I'm struggling to work with a colleague. He procrastinates to complete work given to him, and it bothers me a lot as it impacts timelines. How can I overcome this? So that reminds me of when I was made the kitchen manager at Tassajara Zen Monastery. This was quite a while ago now. And I had a similar problem. There was one person who was working in the kitchen under me who would just take a ridiculously long time to complete any job. Like a job that would take most people 10 minutes would take him an hour. And I was getting really frustrated, and I went to one of the senior residents and I told him about this. And the senior resident gave me a very simple answer. He said, well, don't assign him anything that needs to be done quickly. And that really made me change my attitude. I was like, oh, if I need something done in 10 minutes, then I just assign it to somebody else. If I have a job where it doesn't really matter how quickly it gets done, then I can assign it to the person who takes a long time. So that's one thing that you might see if that's helpful. See if there's a way to direct that person towards jobs where it doesn't really matter so much when they finish. Another thing to notice, once again, is that you cannot control other people. So getting upset about what other people do is a losing proposition. You will always lose because you're going to get upset about something you can't control. Rather, the thing is to always look at your own mind, your own activities, and do the best you can with your own activities. Another thing you can do, and I've used this a lot with a certain Italian who I spend a lot of time with, is, for example, if you need something in an hour, tell him that you need it in half an hour. And then you'll actually get it in an hour, which will be on time. So he'll think he's late, but you'll know he's on time. So that's another great technique that you can use. Though you have to be careful here to phrase it in a way that's not deliberate lying, of course. Another thing you can do is just gently point out to the person that his procrastination is causing problems for other people. And just say that, just talk about your own feelings. Like, I feel like you don't value, I feel like you're not aware of how this affects the rest of us. So it makes it quite uncomfortable and difficult for the rest of us. So it'd be much, much nicer on the rest of us if you try to finish things on time. Also be understanding. Be like, I understand that you have a lot of things to work on. I understand that you have a lot of responsibilities, a lot of difficulties of your own. So I understand it's not always easy to meet the timelines. And we do appreciate what you do. So it really helps if you include recognition of the other person's good qualities and also recognition of their struggles. Ask what you can do to help. Ask, like, what are your obstacles? What's holding you back? What's making this take longer? And how can I help you get through those obstacles? Is there something that we can do? to make the work process smoother for you, easier for you. So instead of just going to someone and being like, you're always late, instead it's like, well, how can I help you strategize a better way to work through your difficulties? So showing that you care about the person. Also do nice things. Bring him some nice cookies. Be friendly and polite to him. So cultivate a friendly relationship with him. And that also will make it much easier when you do push him to actually finish things on time. It'll go over more smoothly if you already have a friendly relationship. And he might also start being more attentive and caring in the first place. If he cares about you because you have a friendly relationship, then he'll also care more about how his procrastination affects you. So cultivating that friendly, kind relationship through acts of kindness and gentle speech. Okay.
And Elaine is asking, any chances you can do a talk on the 10 indicators of stream entry? Yes, absolutely. That's a great idea.
Well, actually, when I talk about the Kausambi Sutta, which is already on the schedule, I think.
It is? Okay,
yeah,
perfect.
So when we talk about the Kausambi Sutta, then I'll talk about the 10 indicators.
And Ryan is asking, sorry to come in late. If it's not too late, I have a question. In the suttas, there is a distinction between undirected, signless, and empty concentration. Can the Venerable speak to this? Do you want to go for it?
Okay. Yeah, so that's 3 ways of talking about a very advanced form of meditation practice. So this is a meditation practice where the mind does not focus on any specific object. So that's why it's called objectless. You have here the translation signless, which I don't like because then I think like road signs. And of course, there's no signs. So the Pali word is nimitta, which means object of attention, object of awareness, whatever you're focusing on. So it's animitta samadhi. It's samadhi with no object that one is focusing on. It's apanahita samadhi, which you translate as undirected. That means you're not pointing the mind in any particular way. You're not trying to make the mind do anything in particular. Empty is usually sunya or sunyata, which is the recognition of the insubstantiality of all things. So these are 3 ways of training the mind, which are all actually just different aspects of the same thing, different facets of the same meditation method, which is described in somewhat more detail in Chan Buddhism as silent illumination practice. So if you look up the teachings of Chan Master Sheng Yen on silent illumination, you'll find a lot of teachings from a contemporary Chan Master about how to practice that style of meditation. Okay.
And he's also asking, actually, the next one, I think it's related. Following up on my question last night, is it harder to get to jhana through shikantaza type practice than others? I'm finding it works really well for me to get settled.
So I would say for most people, yes, it's harder. It's easier to get to jhana using an object-based meditation method. It's much more difficult to do it with objectless meditation. But some people, they have a really strong natural affinity for objectless meditation. And for them, it's much easier. Those people are much less common. Most people do better with object-based samadhi, but a small percentage of people have an affinity with objectless meditation, objectless samadhi. And that probably comes from practicing it a lot in past lives. So if you have a natural affinity with it, that's fine. I will warn you though, it's a very subtle method and most people are not practicing it correctly. Most people are what you might call practicing the near enemy of silent illumination practice, the near enemy of shikantaza. So just as pity is the near enemy of compassion and apathy is the near enemy of equanimity, there's a near enemy of shikantaza which is remarkably similar to wasting time. So it's very, very easy to waste a lot of time thinking you're doing shikantaza when you're not. You're just spacing out, or the mind is just very dull and hazy and unclear. But you think you're doing shikantaza when you're actually just wasting time. So you have to be really clear what you're doing. So the practice of shikantaza is letting go of absolutely everything while maintaining utmost sharpness of clarity and attention. So the mind remains incredibly sharp, awake, alert, while one lets go of every sight, every sound, every smell, every taste, every tactile sensation, and every mind object. That's shikantaza. That's silent illumination. And that's really, really, really hard. Unless you've already developed a strong basis in object-based samatha and vipassana practices, then it gets substantially easier to practice silent illumination. But again, as I said, some people, for whatever reason, most likely past life karma, they just have this really strong affinity for objectless meditation, and they just click with it. Maybe you're one of those people. Yeah, but you have to see for yourself. See for yourself what's going on with your mind when you're doing this practice. Okay?
And Victor is asking, how can we view Avalokiteshvara in the Theravada tradition since there is nothing explanation in Pali? I think you probably want to answer this because you have a strong affinity to Avalokiteshvara.
No fair. She's making me answer everything.
There's others.
Okay, you have to answer the next 3 questions then.
I don't know about the next 3, but I can do the next one.
Okay. So let's see. That's true. There's no explanation in Pali of specifically the character of Avalokiteshvara, Guanyin Pusa, Guanyin Bodhisattva. What there is in Pali is the concept of compassion and of developing compassion for all sentient beings without exception. So you can just look at Avalokiteshvara as someone who has taken that practice of compassion to its natural pinnacle. They've perfected the practice of compassion. So you see them as an archetype of compassion. So then it fits quite easily into Pali practice, Pali tradition practice. Because compassion is one of the many qualities that we're trying to develop in every school of Buddhism. And Avalokiteshvara is the archetype of perfect compassion. That's the easiest way. For those who have a hard time relating to bodhisattvas as actual beings, which I don't, I'm actually totally fine with relating to them as actual living beings. But for those who have a hard time with that approach, you can relate to them as archetypes. And then it's usually much easier that way. In actuality, it functions perfectly well both ways, and both perspectives are true in their own way. Whatever works the best for you. Okay.
Thank you. And Gabriella is asking, can we talk a little bit about the kinds of practices a layman or a laywoman can do at home to build up saddha and various devotional practices you think are healthy? Well, right now we're during the pandemic, so there's not a lot of possibilities to go out. But I really recommend actually spending as much time as possible in Asian Buddhist monasteries and temples, because actually the faith that lay people have there is remarkable. And the more you spend the time with practitioners who are born Buddhist and really have no doubt in the triple gem, the more it kind of starts permeating your mind and shaping it by osmosis in a way. So I find it very helpful. You'll see that in pretty much anything if you really start closely paying attention to your mind, that whoever you are surrounding yourself with, you're kind of being influenced by their thoughts and energy in one shape or form. So you want to kind of carefully do this to cultivate the mind states that you feel like you need to do. So for me personally, it has been extremely beneficial because I'm not a faithful person by default. Quite the opposite. I tend to be a little bit skeptical, and I tend to veer towards a sort of dry approach to Buddhist practice in terms of my background is agnostic. I've been agnostic for most of my adult life. So very close to atheist. So I'd say agnostic, leaning very much towards, well, if I really have to pick, probably there's nothing, but I'll leave the door open just in case. So that's also very Italian. It's kind of like, you never know. Mettere safe than sorry. But that's, the sort of also people that I hung out with most of my adult life shared that same view. So it was just spiritual practice wasn't something that we were worrying about. And it has come as I have cultivated my practice. I have to say that whenever I was surrounded by Asian Buddhists, I would notice this stark difference between the way I was approaching the path and they were approaching the path, and the corresponding wholesome mind states. So we have May here, who is a lovely practitioner from Burma, and I always love to say this story. Actually, Bante told me yesterday, was it, that I repeat it like multiple times a week. But the first time actually I met her, one of the first things that she noticed was that Bante's shoe had a hole, and she went out of her way to replace his shoes. And it was really remarkable to me the fact that she had spent actually so much kind of time looking to find a way where to help. And it was coming out of like not knowing Bante. She hadn't really like spent that much time in our presence. Now we're, well, good friends, aren't we? I hope so anyway. She's been around for a while, like we've known her for a while, but it was just out of faith, out of really like seeing how beautiful and valuable the triple gem is. And with that, there's a lot of different, you can say, rituals or practices that each tradition does differently, and that you can really see for yourself by taking it as, just doing it first. Because a lot of things, if you're slightly like me, at the very beginning, you would go like, why should I be doing that? For example, when I went to a Chinese Mahayana temple once, and they introduced me to the prostration practice in the Mahayana way. So I was already averse to the simple like Theravada bowing. And I was like, okay, this is like a whole like other level, like the prostration. And I'm like, and they're like, oh yeah, now we're doing 1 hour of prostrations. And I'm like, oh, what? And I had this like really strong aversion at the idea of it, because I considered it a waste of time. But then as I did it, because I was there in a retreat sort of situation, so I kind of didn't really, especially in the Mahayana tradition, if you disappear, they come and get you. So there was no way out of it, even if I tried. As I started doing all these prostrations, then I realized the value in it, and how my mind basically was becoming purified by all of these unwholesome thoughts, and becoming more gentle and more like, yes, I bow to the Buddha. Yes, I bow to the Dhamma. I bow to the Sangha. Like real joy. So that worked a lot for me, but I only managed to realize that how beneficial it was for my mind by giving it a shot instead of just picking and choosing, going like, "Ooh, I like that type of bowing." It was also great because once I did an hour multiple times a day of Mahayana bowing, then I had no problem doing the Theravada bowing. It was so easy. Completely removed any kind of hesitancy I had. I was like, oh yeah, sure. It's completely, totally okay. And with a joyful mind. The other thing is recollecting Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha actually really strengthens faith and strengthens mindfulness too. Recollecting the incredible qualities that a Samma Buddha has developed. Incredible. Wow. Beautiful. So practicing in that way. And really doing another thing that really sort of built up with me, like at the very beginning of my practice, I would never light up incense by myself. I would only like do it in a sort of institutional setup. If there are other people, then whatever, we light incense and we bow to the Buddha because that's what we're supposed to do. But if I was by myself, I would only do meditation practice. And then I was alone for a period of time in a monastery in a kuti. And after a couple of days that I was meditating by myself, I created my little altar and I started lighting incense and bowing, which for me was to do that impromptu alone where nobody saw me was a first. And I would have never imagined myself chanting just by myself. And wow, what an impact it made on my mind. My mind was so joyful and beautiful and really shaped my meditation practice. So kind of just giving a shot to all of these. There's so many different things that one can do. See what works. Try it out. And what cultivates a bright mind, then you keep watering it. Keep doing it. Have anything to add?
That's good. You can do the next question as well.
All right. And Jin says, can you please give me some ideas how to feel connected with Dhamma while there are no Dhamma communities and fellow Buddhists around you? Well, first of all, the first connection is with the suttas. So just listening, really reading the words of the Buddha. And whenever you see the Dhamma, you see the Buddha. So that's a first. If that doesn't work, some people I've heard don't really like reading the Pali Canon, which is shocking to me. But I've heard there are some people that don't really have an affinity towards the sutras either. So in that case, if you don't have an affinity with the Pali Suttas, then maybe try the Mahayana Suttas. I've heard that also some people don't have an affinity towards the Mahayana Sutras, which is very bizarre. But it can happen. So then just pick up a Dharma book from more contemporary monks. So for Sangha.org, I think it is, has a whole collection of all the Thai forest books that you can download for free. So there's a huge, from extremely contemporary to like a little slightly less contemporary, and especially Ajahn Chah. I've heard that also some people don't like reading Ajahn Chah, but in that case, go to Master Shen Yen. There's also some great readings online. So that is where I would start. Then, of course, like we're doing right now, on online Dharma friends little community. So I think we'll keep that to one degree or another also after the pandemic. But there's also our friend Bhante Jayasara. He's on Discord, which is a program that I have never used, but I've heard good things about. Actually, there are some friends here, Gabriella and other friends that meet there. Bhante Yupadamo also has a regular online sort of Dharma group. So there's lots of online options that you can look into. Isn't that great? where you can connect with fellow practitioners and really cultivate a practice. And then, as we were talking about also earlier, really start creating kind of a devotional practice, morning and evening during your chanting and meditation practice. Yeah, create it. If it's not there, create it. There was nothing in New York City, so I rolled up my sleeves and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do something that, I mean, there were many things in New York City. There was just not the thing that I was looking for. So I'm sure there are like lots of different other options where you are, but not what you think is beneficial for you in that time and place. So you gotta roll up your sleeves and you can start Buddhist Insights chapter in wherever you are.
So this next one, Sally asks, the reason I asked about confirming oneself as stream enterer is because I remembered a story. A senior Bhante was able to teach students to attain arhantship. He always thought he was an arhant. One day his student, who was an arhant, realized his teacher is not an arhant yet. I was just confused that even someone checked his qualities meets arhant quality, but the facts can still be not yet. How to understand this story? So it's very common that people overestimate their own attainments because, well, for a number of reasons. Often one attains states of mind where the mind feels very pure and very bright for long periods of time, but it's not completely purified. But it's so much more pure and clear than you've ever experienced that it seems amazing. And so people often overestimate that. They think that they've attained stream entry if they haven't, or if they have attained some degree, they might think that they're fully enlightened. They might think they're an arhat. For example, Ajahn Mahabua, who he was a Thai monk who passed away a few years ago and who was widely believed to be fully enlightened. He talks in some detail about his experiences as he practiced the path and his various stages of awakening leading up to becoming an arhat. And he talks about a stage just before becoming an arhat. So there's this immediately previous stage where one comes to see the mind itself. And it seems so incredibly pure and radiant and beautiful beyond imagining. And he says when he encountered this, naturally he fell in love with it. And he thought he'd found the highest, but he hadn't. And it wasn't until quite some time later that he realized that was just the final layer of delusion. And he stripped it away, and that was when he had his breakthrough. And he makes a few interesting comments here. One, he said that the final breakthrough is something so unexpected, completely beyond and different from what we expect it to be. Like the entire universe suddenly flips upside down. Like it was something completely different from what we think it is to attain awakening. That was one interesting thing he said. But another thing he said, which is more directly relevant here, is he said that when one comes to that immediately previous stage, so directly seeing the bright, pure mind, everyone gets obsessed with it. Everyone gets attached to it. Everyone misunderstands what it is. So it's virtually impossible not to. Everybody stumbles at that last step, because that's when you're coming up against the single most challenging thing in the mind, the single most challenging thing in samsara. So long story short, it's really, really common for people to overestimate their attainment. Even if someone intellectually knows the right path, they can still stumble. But since they know the right path, they can explain the right path to other people, and those other people might make faster progress. So the story you tell, it's quite plausible. that someone might be teaching a path to their students, and their student makes swifter progress and attains awakening before the teacher. Quite possible. Okay, so that was long story long, or short story long. So maybe, do you want to take the next one?
Can you do a talk about the paramis? Yes, we can do a talk about the paramis. Not now, but in the future. And Tina is asking, I give my colleague work which is not due for weeks, but at some point it becomes due date and he is still not done. I do share a very friendly relationship with him, and I think he takes advantage.
Well, one thing I would say is, if it's due in 4 weeks, tell him that you need it in 1 week. Don't say it's due in 4 weeks, because that would technically be lying. But tell him that you need it in 1 week. And then 1 week from now, go and check with him. Be like, oh, hey, friend, how are you doing? I brought you some cookies. They're from Italy. They're really good. So how's that project? Is it done yet? And when he says no, say like, well, I really needed it by now. I told you a week ago I needed it in 1 week. Can you please hurry up and finish it? Maybe try to have it done in a couple of days. Maybe ask him, like, how's it going? Can you show me briefly what you've done so far? Can you tell me if you're having any difficulties? And maybe I can help you get through these difficulties. And then again, keep checking back in every couple of days. Be like, okay, I really need that. I needed it a few days ago. What's going on? Oh, and here's this chocolate that I picked up at Whole Foods. It's really nice. You shouldn't go to Whole Foods, actually. It's evil. From the local farmer's market. It's really good. How's that project going? Are we done yet? So checking in this gentle, kind way. So constantly reminding him that he's late and overdue, even though in your mind you know that there's still a little bit of window. So you do sometimes have to be a little creative when working with those kinds of conditions. What I do not recommend, by the way, is going to the person and being like, okay, I've got a new assignment for you. It's due immediately. And then the next day, I've got a new assignment. It's due immediately. Next day, I've got a new one. It's due immediately. That will just piss him off. So give him a reasonable amount of time, but recognizing that he's going to take 3 or 4 times as long as what you give him. So accordingly, again, if you need it in 4 weeks, tell him you need it in 1. And then keep checking in with him until it's done. Kindly, gently, with gifts, but keep checking in.
And Gabriela is asking, I find for me the 5 precepts and 8 lifetime precepts and 8 monastic precepts to be a bit lax. What are some precepts that layfolk can use to challenge themselves in sila, moral training? Really, Gabriela? Really? Lax? Really? I think you're not practicing properly. You have to want to master them. Master these precepts. Are you always impeccable with your speech? Are you impeccable with your actions? Then we're going to talk about it further.
Victor says, can you attain awakening just with correct mind with weak samadhi? No, you need the samadhi.
I love that Victor is always trying to skip the samadhi part. Is this samadhi like really essential?
And then another one from Victor.
Is Buddhist practitioners be considered atheist or theist? So my understanding, I would say that Buddhism is not a non-theistic religion, which is different than being atheist. So atheism is, but I might be wrong, so please correct me. My understanding is that there is the belief, which is a belief in and of itself, that there is no sort of nothing besides what is material, what we can actually like touch and feel, and so it's a material understanding of the world. So there is no God, but there are also no gods. And a theistic religion will be where, this is also my understanding, so please correct me, that the world or our experience or whatever it is the creation of supreme being or supreme beings, according to other belief systems. Now, in Buddhism, we're not concerned with God creator, whether God creator exists or does not exist. We're concerned with the cessation of suffering. This being said, in Buddhism, there are different realms of existence. And in some of these realms of existence, there are beings that are godlike. So they're not a creator God, but they don't have a body, which is great. And are experiencing the world in a different way. So they're having a more pleasant sort of experience than the human realm. Just like animals are having a less fun experience than humans in the world. And we see this, especially now that we moved to West Orange, and there are all these like creatures that want to kill the chickens. It's very like evident how cruel kind of like the animal, like being in the animal world can be. So that's why I'm saying it's a non-theistic religion rather than an atheist religion. But that's how I'm using those terms. So perhaps Bhante can clarify.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
Okay, I got the Bhante approval. Thumbs up.
Sally asks, this week in the Sutta study, we learned 4 requisites of a monastic, including the 4th one, medicine. May I ask, how could a monastic take care of herself or himself when serious sickness comes up in the USA? A country that's serious illness, medical cost is tremendous if someone is not working or doesn't have insurance.
Faith.
Well, there's that, but there's also the fact that since my annual income is 0, then I qualify for government health insurance, which is not perfect, but it's better than nothing. It's actually not bad, to be honest. I very rarely use it for anything. I've only used it a couple times in the last few years, but it's there, which is great. If there are things which one needs to take care of, but one doesn't have access to ordinary healthcare, you can also research natural medicines. There's a lot of herbs and roots and plants which are extremely cheap and commonly available, which have various medical properties and can be quite effective at treating various conditions, especially more mild conditions. You can treat through natural medicines or through diet, changing what you eat and how you eat. So actually, Ayasoma knows a lot more than I do. I actually know very little about this. She knows quite a bit about how to heal your body using foods and natural herbs and medicines and things. So do some research and see what you can find. Another thing, in extreme cases, then monastics might need to fundraise to deal with a specific illness, or move to Europe, as the case may be. Or actually many Buddhist countries have free healthcare for monastics. Yeah, so there's different options. Another option is practicing equanimity, but that's kind of a last resort because while it keeps your mind clean, it doesn't do much for the body. Yeah, so those are some thoughts.
And I think Gabriella is inviting us to the Discord, I think.
She's asking Jean.
Yeah, but after.
Yeah? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Be happy to do that.
Then Stampoable has a question for you.
Hello, Venerables. May I ask a question? I work in a gas station. Is selling cigarettes against right livelihood? Is it selling poison? I'm Italian, so actually I shouldn't really reply this. You should, he can address this.
Yeah, I would say yes, it is. Yeah. So selling alcohol is definitely wrong livelihood. The Buddha specifically mentions selling alcohol, selling weapons, selling meat, selling poisons. Those are all things he specifically listed as wrong livelihood. He lists a bunch of other things, but those are some of the major ones. And so, yeah, I would in fact include cigarettes under poison. Yeah, I would.
So the Buddha would have specified tobacco in it because it's been happening since the history of time. So I would say perhaps the cigarettes that are sold today, they're particularly toxic, maybe. I wouldn't, but
Okay.
I'm also Italian, so I don't think it's like it's that
So
strong.
one could make an argument that if you're getting pure, natural, organically grown, pesticide-free,
Vabbè.
chemical-free tobacco, that could be qualified as a medicine. But in that case, you could only use it if you have a suitable medical reason. So they have actually done studies which found that small quantities of tobacco have mild health benefits, but that's vastly outweighed by the negative health effects of smoking cigarettes. But as Ayasoma pointed out, a lot of that has to do with the incredibly toxic chemical manufacturing process that goes into most modern day tobacco. So yeah, if it's pure, organic, chemical-free, pesticide-free tobacco, you might consider that a medicine. But once again, you should only use medicines for their indicated medical uses.
Right, but I don't think it's wrong livelihood if you're selling. Anyway, topic of debate.
I would say though it's much less of a big deal than the other ones.
Yeah.
So selling weapons and alcohol and meat, those are pretty clear cut.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't get into that territory if I was you.
All right, and
I think that's the last question.
It.
Yeah, so that looks like the last question. There's still 3 minutes left though, so if anybody has one final shot, we'll take it. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and wrap up there. So a few more comments coming in. What? Some states require minimum income? That is so twisted. So if you make no money, then you can't get government health insurance? That's just mind-blowingly evil.
Oh, well.
But then, I mean, this is America after all, so I shouldn't be too surprised. So yeah, looks like there's no more questions, so we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you all for joining in. Yeah, Sally's saying, I think so. Yeah, I don't, because I remember looking at the federal guidelines, and the federal guidelines are, if you have no income, then you qualify.
Ooh, the question I have is what your favorite sutta? Yes, let's end with the favorite sutta. You go first, Bhante.
Well, there's a few that I really like. One of my favorites is the Kachanagota Sutta. So Samyutta Nikaya 12.15. Dearly, dearly adore that sutta. I love it, love it, love it, love it. It's great. So if I had to pick a favorite, I would probably pick that one. But realistically, I love most of the suttas. Majjhima Nikaya, Signless Nikaya, Nikaya, I love about 98% of those. I'm less fond of the Digha, but it's got some nice things in it as well. Parts of the Khuddaka are also quite lovely. It's more poetic things, less doctrinal, more poetry. But yeah, Kachanagota Sutta, I think, might be my top of the list. It's just really delicious.
And similarly to Bhante, I have lots of favorites, but one of my favorites is actually the Soma Sutta, which is why actually I have the name Soma. So Bhante told actually my preceptor, Venerable Panyavati, about one of my favorite suttas being the Soma Sutta. And so she named me after Bhikkhuni Soma. Fun fact. All right. Well,
okay.
We'll see you then tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. We'll be back with the Sutta study. And then at 7:30 p.m., I think Bhante will also give another talk on, I don't remember the topic, but something Dharma related. And Tuesday, same thing. In the morning, we'll have Sutta study, and evening Dhamma talk. And on Wednesday, we're going to start our week-long retreat. So you're all welcome to come on retreat with us for a week. And if you can't actually do the whole retreat, you're still welcome to show up for morning and evening. We'll probably have, for those of you who are following the entire time, we will be also announcing perhaps extra meetings throughout the week long, but we're kind of going to improvise, do it as we go during the retreat rather than creating the expectation beforehand.
Yeah, so we'll still have the usual 8 a.m., 7:30 p.m. So please join in for those. And Wednesday, 8 a.m., I'll lay out a framework of practice for the retreat for everyone to follow. So thank you once again. And hello, Yanni. So happy that you checked in as well. So we'll see all of you next time.
Sadhu,
sadhu, sadhu.
sadhu.